Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tiff Talks Tech. I am excited because today my guest is Hannah Diamant, who is the National Director of Digital Marketing at Campus Life and Style. And today we're going to be talking about the essential tech stack for modern student housing because her portfolio is primarily student housing. I really want to dive into this and all the tech that is helping you guys today. But before we really dive in, can you share a little bit about your background in multifamily and kind of a little bit about the portfolio that you manage as well?
Sure. So, first off, thanks for having me. I've
Oh,
been excited about this. So, my background's a little bit different as compared to other people in the industry. Obviously, most people in the multifamily student housing industry came from student housing or multifamily from college. Most people were an LP leasing manager at an on-site property and then just stayed in student housing, just stayed in the industry. So I did not. So in my undergrad, I was a recruiter from my school. I was in the Disney College program. And then coming right out of college, I actually worked for GoDaddy for a little while before finding Campus Life and Style. So my whole career makes no sense, but I love the student housing industry. So, like you mentioned, I've kind of worked my way up within Campus Life and Style. I started as a digital marketing specialist and then kind of went up the ladder until director today. About us, so Campus Life and Style, we right now oversee a portfolio of about 60 properties. We're at around 32,000 beds at this point. We both own as well as third party manage our properties. And as you mentioned, we're in student housing, but we're ever so slowly heading into the multifamily sphere.
awesome. I love that. Can you kind of get started with telling us about some of the key technological needs that you guys have in modern student housing?
For sure. So I first want to talk about the evolution, and I think that's
Yeah.
what you're going to ask me next. So first, as far as an evolutionary standpoint, there's been a big shift when it comes to millennials versus Gen Z,
Mm,
and I reference those two generations because they're the most recent. And so there's kind of been two big shifts when it comes to technologies. For millennials, we are used to, because I'm also in that category, we are used to technology and our natural environment being separate. And so we have had to adapt to technology in our lifetimes versus Gen Z, who's been completely immersed in technology for their entire lives.
mm,
So that's one big difference. But then the second is kind of as I mentioned, millennials like to keep our worlds separate, our technology worlds and our natural worlds separate because of that adaptation. We're just not used to them being integrated all that much. We kind of like our separate little worlds. And so with our Gen Zers, though, they expect that integration. They expect there to be a seamless path between technological world and our regular degular, just kind of natural world. And so with that evolution in mind, the needs when it comes to modern student housing, and I mean there's so many of them, but I'll just touch on two. For one is creating that seamless digital experience.
mm,
And so what we have going on with our technologies, how they're working, needs to align with what's going on site with our on-site team members. There needs to be a linear experience for the prospect, for the resident when it comes to going in and out of technology and then interacting with us on site. And then the second one, which almost seems counterintuitive to technology, is that we need to use technology to create a personalized experience. With our Gen Zers being totally surrounded by technology their entire lives, they expect things to be tailor made to them. You have all of these AIs, you have all of these chat GPTs. They're going to give you the exact answers for you that you're looking for. I can ask ChatGPT such a specific question to me, and it's going to give me a tailor-made answer for me. And so we need to make sure that any sort of technologies that we bring into this space are creating that personalized experience for those Gen Zers, because as you know, I'm sure they value feeling um, or really being able to speak and really being able to be heard. And so we need to provide that through our technologies.
Yeah, definitely. So, are there any core components like when you're looking for those technologies in your stack? What are those things that you really look for?
I think the biggest one is going to be ease of use, both ease of use for our team members of being able, it's not taking a lot of work on their end. So ease of use for us, but then ease of use, most importantly, for our prospects, for our leads, for our residents. It needs to be very straightforward. It doesn't need to have a bunch of different steps to it. And so that's the number one thing that I look for when bringing on a new technology is what is going to be the easiest across the board, the most straightforward, the most clean cut.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any I know you guys said you're kind of diving into a little bit of conventional as well. Is there anything you've noticed as far as technology that is more essential to student housing, or do you feel like it's pretty comparable and they kind of use the same things?
I think multifamily will eventually head into this world because our Gen Zers are going to get older. But for now, I would say one technology that I see all over the place with student housing, not so much with multifamily right now, are those chatbots. As you know, you see the better bots, you see the made leases, you see kind of all of these bots that are either conversation branching or are just open. And so I would say that's probably the biggest piece of technology that I would say is now standard across student housing, but multifamily isn't quite there yet.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure with how fast AI is evolving, it'll get even better quicker too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Are there any processes that are more nuanced in student housing or like what's different? I remember when I was on the property management side, we had one student property. And I always thought it was so crazy that they did rent by the bed rather than like the whole apartment. And that I was just so shocked by that. But it makes so much sense. Is there anything else that's like that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, and kind of keeping in alignment with what we're talking about today, really it's the expectations of our residents and our prospects are vastly different
Mm.
from multifamily. I read the statistic yesterday, and it said that 45% of Gen Zers claim that they're online almost constantly, which is
Mm.
wild to me. Your eyes must be very dry. So really for us in student housing, we have to completely shift our priorities to meet them exactly where they are. Whereas when you think about millennials or multifamily, I mean, you have people from all generations that are living on multifamily sites. And so there's going to be older generations that aren't on the cell phone at all. So I would say that's probably one of our biggest differences between student housing and multifamily.
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, can't even imagine the differences between like senior housing and student housing. They're completely different worlds.
Yes,
Like
very
you said,
different.
my grandma does not use the internet. She refuses. And I'm like, Grandma, you gotta get with it.
Yeah, they're very stubborn, the older generations. My grandpa has had one of the first flip phones that has ever come into play. He still uses it. We can barely get a hold of him. He doesn't even know how to use it. And so we just have to call him on the regular landline if we're ever trying to get a hold of him.
Yeah, totally. So I know that I mean, in multifamily, we are constantly talking about the importance of integrations and how does that impact student housing and where is the importance lie there?
Yeah, so for technologies, I think integration is one of the most important things, if not the most important thing when you're choosing your technologies. The worst thing that you can do is complicate the system and both for our teams and as well as our residents, our prospects. And so I know that I hate going to company websites that have 17 different pop-ups that pop up for me. I don't know where to interact. I don't know what form to fill out. And I'm going to bounce. I'm not going to stay on that website for very long. And so it's the same thing. All of these new technologies have to work together. One of the biggest things is making sure that they are integrated with our CRM. That's probably the biggest thing. Because again, if you are creating all of these different steps and requiring our students to just participate in so many different ways, they're going to stop working with us and they're not going to go any further in their leasing process.
Yeah, you wanna make it as simple as possible. I remember one of the things I hear all the time is your website looking like Las Vegas? Because there's just so many, like, flashing lights and popping widgets, and it's like, "That's too much. We need to make it simple, easy interaction, and let's integrate the whole process as much as we can."
Yep.
Are there
Yep.
any challenges that you've really seen in achieving that seamless integration?
Yeah, I would say some technologies, they're simply not, and I don't know specific terms, definitely not an engineer, but they just physically can't integrate with our systems, whether that's their coding, whether that's their script. And so it's just not able to happen. And so that's obviously a barrier for us to be able to work with that company if they're unable to as well adapt. And of course, in these days, these different companies are becoming more and more advanced. And so obviously they really want you to be under their master umbrella. And so sometimes they're not willing to adapt and not willing to connect with your different technologies. And so I would say that's probably the biggest one is that sometimes you actually physically are incapable of connecting with your other parts of your business.
I feel like sometimes I feel like that girl, Mean Girls, where she's like, "Oh, just wish we could all have cupcakes and get along," or I don't even but she's like,
Uh-huh.
"Why can't everybody just integrate together?"
Yes.
Having all these different technologies, how do they impact the experience of the student as they go through their journey?
Yeah, so they can either be super helpful or super detrimental, which
Mhm.
is kind of a scary thing to think about. You know, sometimes I mean, we can get so excited about these new technologies and they are super cool. But if we take on all of these different kinds, it's actually going to slow down the process by deterring the user from wanting to go further. Again, kind of similar to what I said before, if you're creating all of these different steps by adding in all these technologies, no matter how cool they are, it's just another thing that they have to worry about. It's taking up more of their time. It's less efficient. And so you really have to be careful. And that's kind of where the line is of whether it's super helpful or not, is just making it more complicated for the user.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any examples of solutions that you've used? You don't have to say the name or you can, but like is there anything that's really enhanced the student engagement and satisfaction overall?
Yeah, so when it comes to student engagement, I would say that's where the chatbots come into play. So of course we got better bots. We work with Meet Elise, and so really, having something available to the users 24/7 is always going to increase engagement because as we know, these students are staying up all night, which I cannot imagine these days. I have to be in my bed by 10 p.m. at the latest. But that's where a lot of our engagement is coming is after hours. And so those chatbots, those open AIs are obviously super helpful for that engagement, as well as if our teams are just super busy on site, let's say turn our teams are in turn mode. We try to have a designated individual that's solely focused on leasing, but you just don't have as big of a team that's available to help with those things. So again, that's where these chatbots come into place. And then when it comes to customer satisfaction, we've found that our virtual touring mechanisms and technologies have been wonderful when it
Really?
comes to that, just because again, we're meeting the user where they are. When you think about parents that can't come into markets, when you think about international students, I mean, it's scary and it's stressful trying to find an apartment. And so being able to create a beautiful and advanced virtual tour really helps the customer experience. And we found it to be positive across the board.
Yeah. Do you guys, this is kind of off, but do you guys have virtual tours of every single one of your units, or is it more like the floor plan? We stick with just the floor plan type.
Both. So we have the virtual renderings across our entire portfolio. And then we now have, and we're continuing to expand our virtual touring technologies. So we use lease magnets. And so that is very hands-on approach. I mean, the user gets to decide how they want to go through our property. We use professional videographers. And so there's only a handful of properties right now in our portfolio that have them, but we definitely plan on expanding it to more of our portfolio.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that takes time, but it's so worth it at the end of the day.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about data management. What role does that play in like the student housing tech stack?
It's huge, absolutely ginormous. It is so easy to waste money with
Mm.
technology. Technology is very expensive. So it is super cool to have all of these industry leading technologies as part of your resident experience. But honestly, it means nothing if you do not see results from it. And success is going to look different for every single company. But from the beginning, you have to define what success means for you. And then you need to go and grab as many numbers as humanly possible to help you come to that conclusion.
What are some of the things that work for you that you are always looking at?
Think, I mean, it's working directly with the technology account managers, engineers to make sure that they're tracking what we want them to. This is where our CRM comes into play as well because it's tracking a bunch of numbers. So honestly, it's a lot of communication versus anything else of making sure that the teams understand, hey, these are the numbers that we need. And because sometimes they're building in new tracking systems for us,
Yeah.
and then having that communication, but also having really solid reports. So we work really hard internally to make sure that our reporting is very clean and easy to understand, and that it's big enough to be able to take in all of those data points.
Once you have all that data, how do you use it to improve your operational efficiency and make decisions off of it?
I mean, I think data provides every answer you need to any questions. I mean, data is king. And so really as far as figuring out efficiency and decision making, it's all about understanding the data first. And so for us, we seek it out, we track it, and then understand it. And then based off of those understandings, it's going back to the operational side of our business. It's talking through these things, it's having open conversations and understanding, okay, based off of what we have, what do we want to change about what we're doing? Are they big changes? Are they small changes? How easy is it to make changes? And then if we do make changes to our processes, our efficiencies, again, it's about tracking those changes too. So you really just have to pay attention to every piece of every technology throughout its entire process and lifespan.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there trends that you're seeing in student housing specifically that you think that's going to be the future, and how can we prepare for that?
So I think there's so many different ways that you can go in with this answer, but I kind of had a few that were top of mind for me. So obviously, we
Mhm.
see that all over the place. It seemed to pop up out of nowhere recently, I would say within the last year. But the truth is that companies have been working on AI for so long, and it's been out there in the world for so long. It's just now it's become a lot more prevalent. But I think we're going to continue to see more advanced AI come into play, virtual experiences just as a whole. So, speaking to those virtual tours, cybersecurity. I think the importance of cybersecurity and cybersecurity technologies will come more into play as we continue to head into that AI world. I think tracking, you're going to keep seeing more and more tracking capabilities. Tech solution specialists is a
Mm,
big thing that I'm beginning to see across the board. I wouldn't say that every company has this yet,
yeah.
but I think the importance of having an individual that's solely focused on the technology, that's the only thing they do, as well as being able to troubleshoot issues. I think that's going to be a big trend and a big change for student housing. And then I would say augmented reality. It's been coming into student housing for a bit. I don't see it as being super prevalent yet, but I think we're going to get there. I was at the eye doctor earlier this week, and you know how at the very beginning of your appointment you have to go through a couple different exercises. So you're being kind of having to do all these different tests before your actual like speaking with the eye doctor. So when I was at the eye doctor earlier, we did every single test through that headset. And so then based off of how I did in that test, it sent the results to my eye doctor, who was then able to go through them and then talk to me about anything they had. So the entire eye doctor exam was through virtual reality headsets.
That's
So
so
I
cool.
so cool. And I've never seen that before in any industry where it be that easy and that seamless. And so I think we're not there yet at all, but we're going to start heading in that direction too. And so I don't know what that looks like for student housing and our industry, but stuff like that, I think we're going to start seeing all over the place.
I'm so glad that you also said that because I've been wondering about that. My husband, he has a headset, and I'm like, how cool would it be to go through an apartment tour on this headset? Like, it's just so real. It's right in front of you. You feel like it. And if you've never used one, you have to try it. It's like being in another world. It's crazy. But I've been wondering about that too. So I could see off in the distant future that becoming a thing for sure.
I think so as well. I would say I've always said like 5 to 10 years down the
Yeah.
road, you're going to have a full virtual tour experience right from your home. So our students are not even going to have to leave their apartments, their homes internationally. They're going to be able to pop on their headset, come and visit us virtually, and get the full tour experience,
Would be
which
cool
would
if
be
they could
so
do
cool.
the outside too, like, because I imagine it would be easier to do the inside, but if you could see the grounds too, that'd be amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I know one of the pain points that I see pretty often in our industry is having a tight budget. How should property management teams approach budgeting for tech in student housing?
So obviously it depends on what your company is currently offering, as well as what goals the company wants to achieve as a whole. But bottom line is we don't have unlimited money.
Mhm.
And so I think right now it's a matter of really beginning to think through and take note of what is working at your property and what isn't. So when that plate of technology options comes your way, you're most likely going to have to cut something just because the budgets you know, don't get bigger as we go. If anything, they go small, they get
Mhm.
smaller. So understanding what's working right now and what isn't is going to help to adapt your budget in the future as we head into more technology items.
Yeah. Are there any other factors that they should consider when they want to get the most bang for their buck?
So again, it depends on the end goal, but I think for me, two general ways of tracking value and success for student housing specifically is one, is this technology driving traffic? And two, is it helping us close on leases? That is what we're doing at the end of the day. We need to fill our beds. And it's a very cyclical thing. It's constantly having, I mean, we're constantly working on whether it's immediate move-ins or for fall leasing. And so that's our end goal. And so you need new humans coming in for that and learning about your properties. It has to drive traffic. Then on the back end, we need help closing leases. So if the technologies aren't doing those two big things, I would say keep looking for a different one or maybe hold out on using that technology right now.
Yeah. And I think something that we often forget is like student housing, there's so much, I mean, you're turning over all the time because it's students,
Right.
like they live there forever. So that is
Yes.
something that you're constantly having to do.
Yep.
Yeah. So when you're looking for tech vendors that can really supply you with what you need, are there certain criteria that you look for and you think others need to be aware of?
I think communication.
Yeah.
Communication to me is the most important thing when bringing on anything new into your business. Having team on the tech side being good communicators with you, having a designated account manager. If you find that that team is hard to get a hold of, if they're not good at troubleshooting in a fast manner, those are huge issues, and it's going to make using those technologies so much harder. So honestly, the biggest criteria in my mind is having a team on the other side that's good at communication and is also going to be able to communicate any new features that they have. Every company such as your own, you all are always coming up with new things and new ways to help the industry. And so it's cool to have those new things. But again, if you're unable to communicate the success of those or how they're doing, our partnership is not going to expand.
Absolutely. So, how can property managers gather and really use the feedback from students regarding their experience in the technology that you're using?
So I think it's actually pretty simple. Pay attention. Pay attention to what your students are doing. We're on campus all the time. What are the students doing? Where are they hanging out? So are they on their phones constantly? Most likely, yes. But also utilize your part-timers and your LPs. Both of those individuals are most likely students, college students.
Mhm.
And so ask them, use them as your focus groups. Ask them what technologies they like using right now, if there's anything new, whether it's applications or whatever it may be, but also ask them about the new technologies that you have going on, whether it's on our websites, whether it's on the back end, a texting system. Talk to them about it. They are going to be your best source of information and what's ultimately working or what's not.
Oh, yeah, I remember when I worked on that side, I had just graduated college and our executive team was always contacting, how do you look for apartments? How
Mhm.
do your friends look for apartments? And they had this theory that like our ILS dollars were just kind of throwing away money. And I remember watching my friends look for apartments and they would go straight to an ILS. So it just kind of depends. It depends on the person too, of course. And you can't make your whole strategy off of just one or two people, but absolutely like getting that feedback from those people, they're right at your fingertips. So go ask them because chances are they're around people as well who are doing the same thing.
Yeah, we have a saying in student housing that we get older, but our students get younger. So that gap,
Yeah.
that gap starts to widen. And so if you aren't hip or with it, you need to find someone that is hip or with it, and most likely they're the youngins.
Yeah, for sure. This is a question I didn't really prepare you for. So if you don't have an answer, it's totally fine. But are there any pain points that you are kind of encountering right now that you wish tech could solve?
Great question. I think right now is there was a way to help with urgency. I think, this past leasing season was difficult because, with rising rates, which was great at the very beginning of our leasing season, everyone was able to bump up their rates because everything was going really smoothly. But because of that, because the FAFSA delays, there was just a lot of factors. And so we had properties that were still leasing in the summer. And that's not normal for our industry at all. And that's what we saw across the board for every single company. And so if there was a way, I mean, obviously these different technologies, such as the chatbots, they do a great job of engagement, but I would love for there to be a more maybe in your face way of driving engagement or throughout those processes, throughout a branched conversation, throughout a virtual tour. What can we do? How can we advance those technologies to drive that urgency? And is there another way that we're missing that that we haven't even thought of that could help to do that as well, that's maybe outside of the technologies we already have in place?
Oh, yeah, that's a great call out. Vendors, if you're listening, figure that out, please.
Please.
Yeah. So looking ahead, how do you see the tech stack for student housing kind of evolving and growing?
I think it's not so much bringing on new technologies, although we're going to continually see more and more companies come out with new stuff. So I don't necessarily see our stack expanding to more and more, but I do expect our tech stack to become more advanced. So it's more so the current offerings of our current companies just expanding. And so that umbrella will get larger per company. And so I do think it's just a matter of kind of sticking to your current technologies and then those becoming a lot more advanced versus the latter, just bringing on a whole bunch more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what should property managers do to stay ahead of the curve? Because things are just always changing. How do you stay ahead?
It's difficult. It's something that for one, you have to have a passion for. I mean, obviously for me, being in digital marketing, that's my entire job. It's easy for me in some senses because I'm passionate about it. So I'm going to go and read news stories and go listen to podcasts such as your own. But for people that aren't as excited about it, I think it's about using your resources. If you're a GM and you want to know the latest trends, but you don't really want to spend your time researching, come to me. Go and use your team members that are interested in it, that are really passionate about it, because I guarantee they're going to have the answers. Or if they don't, they're going to be so passionate that they're going to go and find those answers. So I think it's using your human resources as well as just going out. I mean, there's so many different news stories that are happening every single day. There's the podcast, and then my secret sauce is Ad Week. So Ad Week is both, they have a magazine as well as, a blog and news story website. And I love Ad Week because it's primarily focused on advertising, but it's all these different really cool and up to date and ahead of the curve advertising agencies and of course brands that are working with them, and there's always something new that they're working on, and a lot of it right now in this day and age has to do with technology. So that's a big resource center that I go to and can see and find all sorts of cool stuff there.
I'll have to check that out too. That's a great call out. I have a little bonus.
Absolutely recommend.
I have a little bonus question for you. This is something I ask everybody, but it does not have to be related to this conversation. Is there a piece of technology that you are just loving right now in your everyday life and you want to share with the world?
So this is one, I have this technology. One of my coworkers actually told me about it a little while ago, and I've been using it ever since. So it's a technology called the Nudge. And I don't know whether it's just like Austin, Texas, because that's where I live.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's Austin specific or not, or whether it's kind of nationwide, but essentially it's a technology that you subscribe into. So they have my cell phone number. They text me every single week with happenings in Austin.
Cool.
And but what they did on the onset is not only get my phone number, but they asked me a plethora of questions when it comes to what I like to do in my free time. And so they tailor make the suggestions that are texted to me every week to my interests. And then along the way, just like with AI getting smarter and smarter, along the way, they ask me questions of, were these suggestions good? What else would you see? And so it gets smarter and smarter and more tailored to me. So by the items, the events that they're sending to me here in Austin are stuff that I want to go to all the time and stuff that I go to all the time. So it's this cool, like evolutionized piece that's very specific to my city and very specific to me, which I think is really cool.
That's really cool. I was just looking, I'm in Dallas, and so I was just looking. I follow all these accounts like Dallas Love List and Dallas Discovered, and there's just all these Instagram accounts. I follow them all, and I'm like going through, what do I want to do this weekend? I want to do something fall. I would just love it texted to me. That is fantastic. I'm going to see if they have that in my city for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me. This information has been so helpful. Where can people connect with you and just learn more about what you're doing?
Easiest would be LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on my LinkedIn, so come to my page, come message me. I'm happy to talk anything and everything digital marketing related, student housing related. I out on all that stuff.
Amazing. Thank you.